Corporal Jake Martinez walked through the crowded halls of Refugee Station Theta 7 with tired eyes. He had been on security duty for 12 hours straight, and his shift still had 2 more hours to go. The station was packed with thousands of aliens from different worlds, all running from the war that was tearing through their home systems. The air smelled like too many bodies in too small a space. Different species, different foods, different everything. Jake had gotten used to it after 3 months on the station, but some days were harder than others. Today was one of those days. He could hear it before he even turned the corner into the main dormitory section. The crying, that same baby that had been wailing for days now. The sound cut through every other noise on the station, sharp and desperate and endless. Jake stopped at the entrance to Dormitory C inside. Hundreds of refugees were packed into a space meant for maybe half that number. Makeshift beds filled every available spot. Families huddled together with whatever belongings they had managed to bring with them. The lighting was dim to help people sleep, but Jake could see plenty of angry, exhausted faces staring in one direction. He followed their gazes to a corner where a young alien woman sat on the floor, rocking back and forth with a small bundle in her arms. The crying was coming from there. Even from across the room, Jake could see how the woman's shoulders shook. She looked like she was about to fall apart. The woman was. Jake had learned to recognize most of the species that came through the station, were tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly in low light. Their eyes were large and dark, taking up a lot of their face. This one looked young, maybe in her early 20s if aging was anything like human aging. "That thing needs to shut up," a gruff voice said in Galactic Common. Jake turned to see a large male glaring at the woman. 3 days now, 3 days of that noise. Nobody can sleep. Nobody can think. "The medical staff checked the infant," Jake said calmly. He kept his hand away from his weapon. There was twice his size, but Jake had learned that staying calm usually prevented fights better than threats did. "They said the baby is healthy." "Then make it stop crying," the growled. "Or get them out of here, put them somewhere else." "There is nowhere else," Jake replied. "The station is full." They made an angry sound and stomped away. But Jake could see others watching the woman with similar irritation. A few made gestures that Jake's translator couldn't interpret, but the meaning was clear enough. They were not happy. Jake made his way through the crowded dormitory. People moved aside to let him pass. His human uniform marked him as security, and most refugees had learned that humans took their jobs seriously. Some species seemed surprised that humans were even part of the coalition forces. Humanity was still new to the galactic community, only making first contact 15 years ago. But humans had proven themselves useful, especially in situations that required patience and creative thinking. As Jake got closer to the corner, the crying got louder. It was not the angry cry of a baby who wanted food or needed to be changed. This was different. This was the sound of a baby who was scared and overwhelmed and did not know how to stop. The woman looked up as Jake approached. Her dark eyes were red and swollen. She clutched her baby, and Jake could see fear cross her face. He realized she thought he was coming to remove her, to take her to the isolation cells. "I'm not here to move you," Jake said quickly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. His translator device on his collar turned his words into, "I just want to check if you need anything." The woman stared at him. Up close, Jake could see just how exhausted she was. Her skin, which should have had that slight glow, looked dull and gray. She swayed even while sitting down. "My baby," she said in broken Galactic Common. Her translator was older and not as good as Jake's. "My baby will not stop. The doctors say nothing is wrong, but will not stop crying. I do not know what to do." "How long since you slept?" Jake asked. The woman just shook her head. "Too long then." The baby in her arms continued to wail. Jake could see the small face, scrunched up and red. Well, red-blue. Bobbies were darker blue than adults, apparently. The infant's cries were hoarse now, like the baby had been crying so long that its voice was giving out. "What's your name?" Jake asked. The woman said, This is my daughter." "I'm Jake," he said. "Jake Martinez, I'm with Coalition Security." Nodded but did not say anything else. The baby's cries seemed to echo off the metal walls of the station. Around them, Jake could hear muttering from other refugees. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Jake had seen situations like this before, back when he was growing up. Not with aliens, obviously, but the desperation was the same. His sister had gone through something similar with her first child. The baby had cried and cried, and nothing seemed to help until they figured out what the real problem was. "Has eaten?" Jake asked. "Yes," said, "she eats. She is changed. She is not sick. The doctors checked everything. They say Bobbies sometimes cry, but not like this. Never like this." Jake watched the baby for a moment. Its little arms were waving, and her whole body was tense. The crying had a rhythm to it now, almost mechanical. The baby was so worked up that she probably did not even remember why she started crying in the first place. "Can I try something?" Jake asked. Looked at him with surprise. But you are human, you do not know Bobbies." "No," Jake admitted, "but I know Bobbies in general. Human Bobbies cry a lot too. My family is big. I helped raise my younger brothers and sisters. Sometimes Bobbies cry because they're scared or too upset to calm down on their own." Hesitated. Jake could see the conflict on her face. In her culture, maybe letting a stranger hold your baby was strange or wrong, but she was desperate. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "You may try," she said quietly, "but if you hurt her, I will." "I won't hurt her," Jake promised. "I just want to help." He knelt down carefully in front of and held out his arms. The woman looked at her baby, then at Jake, then back at her baby. Finally, moving like every muscle hurt, she lifted and passed the infant to Jake. The moment Jake took the baby, several things happened at once. Other refugees nearby stopped what they were doing to watch. The baby's crying somehow got even louder for a moment, and looked like she might snatch her child back at any second. But Jake had held plenty of Bobbies in his life. He knew how to support the head and keep a firm but gentle grip. Was lighter than a human baby, and her skin felt cool to the touch. Her large eyes, so much like her mother's, were squeezed shut as she cried. Jake stood up slowly and began to walk. Not fast but not slow either. A steady pace with a slight bounce in his step. Rock, step, bounce. Rock, step, bounce. It was a rhythm his own mother had used on him and he had used on his siblings. It was something humans had been doing for thousands of years. He started to hum. Just a simple tune, nothing fancy. The melody his mother used to sing when he was small. He did not know if the baby could even hear it over her own crying, but that was not really the point. The point was to create a calm, steady presence. People were definitely watching now. Jake could feel their eyes on him as he walked in a small circle, bouncing gently and humming. Some looked curious. Others looked skeptical. A few looked angry that he was even trying. But Jake ignored them all. He focused on the baby in his arms and the rhythm of his movement. Rock, step, bounce. Rock, step, bounce. Hum a little tune. Keep breathing steady and slow. It did not happen right away. For the first few minutes kept crying just as hard as before, but Jake did not stop. He kept walking, kept bouncing, kept humming. He had learned a long time ago that Bobbies could sense when you were frustrated or impatient. So he stayed calm, even though his arms were starting to tire. After about 5 minutes, something changed. The baby's cries became a little less intense. Not much, but enough that Jake noticed. He kept going, maintaining the exact same rhythm. Rock, step, bounce. Had stood up and was following him with her eyes, her hands clasped together in front of her chest. She looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. More refugees were gathering now, watching the human soldier walk in circles with the alien baby. Nobody said anything. They just watched. After 10 minutes, cries had definitely quieted down. They were still there, but softer now. The baby's body was not as tense as before. Jake felt a small shift as head settled against his shoulder. He kept going. Rock Step Bounce hummed the tune. At 15 minutes, the crying stopped completely. It did not fade gradually. It just stopped. One moment was whimpering, and the next she was quiet. Jake could feel the baby's breathing against his neck, rapid but starting to slow down. The dormitory had gone completely silent. Hundreds of refugees held their breath, afraid that any sound would start the crying again. Jake kept walking and humming for another 5 minutes just to be sure. Then slowly he began to reduce his movement, less bouncing, slower steps. Eventually he was just swaying gently in place, still humming his mother's tune. Was asleep. Her small body was completely relaxed now, her breathing deep and even. Jake could not help but smile. He turned to find staring at him, with tears streaming down her face. The woman's hands were shaking as she reached out for her baby. Jake carefully transferred back to her mother's arms, moving slowly to avoid waking the infant. Took her daughter and just held her, crying silently as she looked down at the sleeping baby. Hal whispered, "How did you do that?" Jake shrugged. "Sometimes bobbies just need to know they're safe," he said simply. "The station is loud and crowded. She was probably scared and feeding off your stress. She needed someone calm to help her settle down." Around them, refugees were starting to whisper to each other in a dozen different languages. Jake could hear amazement in their voices and something else. Respect, maybe. Or just relief that the crying had finally stopped. Looked up at Jake with an expression he could not quite read. "Thank you," she said. "I do not understand how a human could help my baby when my own people's doctors could not, but thank you." Jake smiled at her. "Humans have had a lot of practice taking care of bobbies. We've been doing it for a long time." He showed her the way he had walked and bounced, the rhythm he had used. Watched carefully, nodding as she tried to memorize the movements. She was swaying now too, gentle and slow, keeping her baby asleep. "Get some rest," Jake told her. "While she's sleeping, you should sleep too." "I will try," said softly. Jake nodded and started to walk away. But before he could take more than a few steps, a voice called out to him. "Human." He turned to see an older woman approaching. She had the scaled skin and ridge of spines down her back that marked her species. Her translator identified her as Doctor, one of the station's medical staff. "That was impressive," Doctor said. "I have been trying to help that infant for 2 days. You succeeded in 20 minutes. How?" Jake thought about how to explain it. "Human bobbies are born very helpless," he said. "More helpless than most species bobbies. So we've had to develop ways to comfort them and keep them calm. Those methods seem to work across species lines." Doctor studied him with her reptilian eyes. "I would like to learn these methods," she said. "Other infants on the station are also distressed. If your techniques can help, we should be using them." "I can show you," Jake said. "It's not complicated, just patience and understanding what bobbies need." As Jake finally continued his patrol, he could feel the atmosphere in the dormitory had changed. It was still crowded and uncomfortable, but the dangerous tension had eased. People were settling down to sleep now that the crying had stopped. Jake did not think much of what he had done. He had just helped a desperate mother and a scared baby. It was the kind of thing any decent person would do. He had no idea that this one simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Jake returned to dormitory C the next morning with a cup of terrible station coffee in his hand. He had slept maybe 4 hours after his shift ended, but it was enough. Years in the military had taught him to function on less. He expected to find the usual chaos of the refugee quarters. Instead, he found something strange. Quiet. Not complete silence, but the normal sounds of people waking up, talking softly, going about their morning routines. No screaming baby. Jake made his way to the corner where he had left the night before. She was still there, sitting on her small bed with sleeping peacefully in her arms, but looked different. Her skin had regained some of its natural glow. Her eyes, while still tired, were not the desperate, haunted eyes from yesterday. "Good morning," Jake said quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. Looked up and her whole face changed when she saw him. She smiled, and it was the first real smile Jake had seen from her. "Good morning, Jake Martinez. Thank you so much. Slept for 6 hours, 6 hours. She woke up twice, but I did what you showed me. The walking and the humming, it worked." "That's great," Jake said, genuinely pleased. "How are you feeling?" "Like a person again," said. "I slept when she slept. Not enough, but more than I have had in days." Around them, other refugees were getting ready for the day. Several of them nodded at Jake as he passed. One older, the same one who had complained yesterday, actually grunted something that might have been thanks. "Everyone else is happier too," said. "They can sleep now. They are not angry at me anymore." Jake was about to respond when a small voice interrupted them. "Excuse me, are you the human who helped the baby?" Jake turned to find a young couple standing behind him. They were a species with gray skin and three-fingered hands. The female was holding a small infant who was making unhappy sounds, not quite crying but clearly upset. "That's me," Jake said. "Could you help us?" the female asked. Her voice was desperate. "Our son has been fussy for weeks. He does not cry like the baby did, but he will not settle down. He barely sleeps. We are so tired." Jake looked at the baby. The infant was squirming in his mother's arms, making little distressed noises. "Has the medical staff checked him?" "Yes," the male said. "They say he is healthy, but he is not happy. We do not know what to do." "Can I hold him?" Jake asked. The couple exchanged a look, then the female carefully handed over her baby. Jake took the infant gently. Bobbies were heavier than human bobbies, with thicker skin. This one looked at Jake with large golden eyes and made a questioning sound. Jake started to walk, using the same rhythm he had used with rock, step, bounce. The baby's eyes went wide with surprise at the movement. Jake hummed softly, keeping his movements steady and calm. Within 5 minutes, the baby had stopped making distressed sounds. Within 10, the infant's eyes were starting to close. Jake showed the parents how to do the walking bounce, explaining the rhythm and why it worked. "Human bobbies need movement to feel safe," he explained. "Our mothers carried us while walking for thousands of years. It is built into us. Seems like it works for other species too." The couple practiced the movement while Jake watched. They got the hang of it quickly, and their baby stayed calm in their arms. The mother started crying, not from sadness but from relief. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much." Word spread fast on a refugee station. By afternoon, Jake had helped 3 more families with fussy or crying bobbies. Each time the techniques worked. Each time exhausted parents looked at him like he had performed a miracle. Captain Lisa Hammond called Jake to her office just before his evening shift started. The captain was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been running the station for 2 years and had seen just about everything. "Martinez," she said as Jake entered, "sit down." Jake sat, wondering if he was in trouble. He had been spending a lot of time helping refugees when he should have been on patrol. "I have received 17 reports about you in the last 18 hours, Captain Hammond said. She did not sound angry, just tired. "All positive. Refugees saying you helped them with their children. Medical staff saying tensions in the dormitories have decreased significantly. Even complaints about you have stopped. Do you want to explain what's going on?" Jake told her about helping with baby, then about the other families who had asked for help. He kept it simple and factual. Captain Hammond listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied him. "You know this is not your job, right? You are security, not." "I know, ma'am," Jake said, "but people needed help. I could help, so I did." And you think these human baby calming techniques work on alien infants? They have so far, Jake said. Not perfectly, but enough to make a difference. Bobbies are bobbies, whatever species they are. They need to feel safe and calm. The specifics might be different, but the basics seem universal. Captain Hammond was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. I should probably tell you to stop. Focus on your security duties and let the medical staff handle this. Yes, ma'am, Jake said, keeping his face neutral. But I'm not going to do that, the captain continued. Because you know what happened today. Not a single fight broke out in any of the dormitories. Not one. Yesterday we had 4. The day before, 6. Screaming bobbies stress everyone out. If you can help with that, you are helping with security. So here's what's going to happen. You will continue your security duties, but you have my permission to help families with distressed infants when needed. Keep your communicator on and respond if there's an emergency. Otherwise, help where you can. Clear. Yes, ma'am, Jake said, surprised but pleased. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Captain Hammond said. This could blow up in our faces. Some species might see this as humans overstepping. Others might think we're trying to control their children. And if something goes wrong, if a baby gets hurt while you're helping, it'll be on both of us. I understand, Jake said. Good, dismissed. Over the next few days, Jake fell into a new routine. He did his security patrols, but now those patrols included regular stops to check on families with young children. He taught parents the walking bounce, the humming technique, different ways to hold and comfort their bobbies. He showed them about white noise and rhythmic sounds that could help bobbies sleep. Doctor, the pediatric specialist, started following Jake around with a data pad. She documented everything he did, asking questions and taking notes. At first, Jake found it uncomfortable, but Doctor explained that she wanted to create a formal training program based on his methods. Human child-rearing practices are not well documented in galactic medical databases, Doctor said. Most species assumed humans were too primitive to have anything useful to contribute, but you have thousands of years of knowledge about caring for vulnerable infants. This could help many species. Jake spent his breaks teaching groups of parents. Word had spread to other dormitories, and now refugees were coming to find him, asking for advice. He felt strange being treated like an expert, but the results spoke for themselves. Bobbies were calmer. Parents were less exhausted. The whole station felt more peaceful. Became his assistant of sorts. Baby had transformed in just a few days. The infant was now happy and curious, sleeping through most nights and alert during the day. Had gotten enough rest to be herself again, and she wanted to help others the way Jake had helped her. In my culture, we do not usually let anyone outside family hold our bobbies, explained one day as they worked together teaching a group of parents. But I was desperate, and you saved us. Now I want others to know that human methods work, that it is okay to ask for help. Together, Jake and helped dozens of families. They became a team, with translating cultural contexts that Jake might miss and Jake providing the technical knowledge about infant care. Other refugees started helping too, parents who had learned the techniques and wanted to pass them on. But not everyone was happy about the changes. One evening, Jake was showing a young father how to swaddle his baby when a group of refugees approached. They were a warrior species, tall and muscular with thick ridged skin. They had been on the station for months, refugees from the same war that had displaced everyone else. Human, the leader said. His name was, and Jake had dealt with him before, did not like humans much. We need to talk. Jake finished showing the father the swaddling technique, then turned to Face and his group. There were 5 of them, all large males. They were not openly hostile, but the tension was clear. What can I do for you? Jake asked calmly. You can stop interfering with our children, said. Do not need human help raising our young. We have done fine for thousands of years without you. I only help families who ask for help, Jake said. If parents don't want my assistance, that's fine. Nobody is forcing anyone to do anything. But you are changing things, another said. Making parents think they need you, making them think the old ways are wrong. Jake shook his head. I'm not saying anyone's way is wrong. I'm just offering another option. If it works, great. If not, that's okay too. Humans think they can solve everyone's problems, said. You have been in space for barely 15 years, and you act like you know better than species who have been traveling the stars for. That's not what this is about, Jake said, keeping his voice level. I'm just using knowledge humans have developed over a very long time. Knowledge about caring for bobbies, which is something every species has to do. Knowledge you are using to make humans look good, said, to make other species dependent on you. That's not true, Jake said. I teach people the techniques so they can use them on their own. I'm not trying to make anyone dependent on anything. The conversation was starting to attract attention. Other refugees were stopping to watch. Jake could see Doctor observing from across the room, her hand near her communicator. Be careful, human, said quietly. Not everyone appreciates your interference. Some of us see what you are really doing. And what am I really doing? Jake asked. Trying to make humans seem better than everyone else. Trying to convince the galaxy that humans are special. But we know the truth. Humans are dangerous and unstable. You do not belong here. Before Jake could respond, a voice cut through the tension. That is not true. Everyone turned to see standing there with baby in her arms. The woman looked scared but determined. Jake Martinez helped my baby when no one else could, said clearly. He did not do it to make humans look good. He did it because a baby was crying and a mother was desperate. He did it because it was right. A foolish does not speak for everyone, said dismissively. No, another voice said. The young mother Jake had helped stepped forward. But I can speak for my family. The human helped us too. Our son sleeps now. We are not so tired anymore. He asked for nothing in return. More voices joined in. The father, a grandmother, a couple. One by one, parents Jake had helped spoke up, defending him against accusations. Looked around at the growing crowd. His face was hard to read, but Jake could see frustration there. Without another word, the leader turned and walked away. His group followed. The crowd slowly dispersed. Several refugees came up to Jake to thank him or to apologize for his words. Jake accepted both with the same calm he had shown during the confrontation. Later, Doctor approached him. That could have gone badly, she said. Yeah, Jake agreed. Is not wrong about one thing, Doctor continued. You are making humans look good. Whether you intend to or not, your actions are changing how species view humanity. Is that a bad thing? Jake asked. Not necessarily, Doctor said, but it makes some people uncomfortable. Humans are still very new to galactic society. Many species are still trying to figure out what humanity's role should be. What you are doing, this demonstration of emotional intelligence and cross-species care, it suggests humans have something valuable to offer beyond military strength. We do, Jake said simply. I believe you, Doctor said, but not everyone will. Be careful, Jake Martinez. Change always makes some people angry. That night, as Jake lay in his bunk trying to sleep, he thought about what Doctor had said. He had not set out to change anything. He had just wanted to help a desperate mother and her crying baby. But somehow, that simple act had started something bigger. He thought about his anger and about the parents who had defended him. He thought about Little, now sleeping peacefully instead of crying for days. He thought about all the bobbies on the station who were calmer and happier because of techniques humans had developed over thousands of years. Maybe Doctor was right. Maybe this was changing how the galaxy saw humanity. But if helping bobbies was what made people uncomfortable, Jake thought, then maybe the galaxy needed to be a little uncomfortable. He fell asleep thinking about his mother's lullaby and wondering what tomorrow would bring. 2 weeks after Jake first helped with baby, refugee station Theta 7 was a different place. The change was not obvious to outsiders, but everyone who lived there could feel it. The air was lighter somehow. People smiled more. There were fewer arguments and almost no fights. Jake's morning routine now included what everyone called baby rounds. He would walk through all 4 main dormitories, checking on families with infants. Most of the time, he just said hello and asked how things were going. The Bobbies were doing well, and the parents had learned the techniques. But people liked seeing him, liked knowing help was available if they needed it. "You have become famous," told him one morning as they shared breakfast in the station's main cafeteria. She had strapped to her chest in a carrier Jake had shown her how to make from spare cloth. The baby was awake and looking around with bright, curious eyes. "People call you the baby whisperer." Jake made a face. "That's a terrible name." "But accurate," said with a smile. "You whisper to Bobbies and they listen." "I don't whisper. I just use common sense and techniques humans have known about for centuries." "Which seem like magic to species who never developed those techniques," Doctor said, sitting down at their table with her meal. The doctor had become a regular part of their group. "I have been compiling data. Infant distress levels are down 47% across the station. Parent stress levels are down 32%. Conflicts in dormitories with young children are down 60%. "Those are good numbers," Jake said. "They are remarkable numbers," Doctor corrected, "and they are attracting attention. I received a message this morning from the Coalition Medical Board. They want to know more about these human infant care techniques. Other refugee stations are reporting similar problems with stressed bobbies and exhausted parents." "What did you tell them?" Jake asked. "I told them the truth, that a human soldier on this station has been teaching cross-species methods with significant success. They want to visit next week to observe your work." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "They want to watch me walk around bouncing bobbies." "They want to document techniques that could help thousands of refugee families across coalition space," Doctor said. "You should be proud. What you are doing matters." Later that day, Captain Hammond called another meeting. This time, several other station officers were present, along with Doctor and the head of Refugee Services, a named administrator. "Martinez," Captain Hammond said, "I will get straight to the point. Your work with refugee infants has caught the attention of people beyond this station. The Coalition wants to formalize what you are doing, create training programs, spread these techniques to other facilities." "That's good, right?" Jake said. "It is good," Administrator said. His species had pale green skin and spoke very precisely. "But it also creates challenges. If we formalize this program, we need protocols, training materials, standards. We need to make sure the techniques work across different species and cultural contexts. And we need to handle the political aspects," Captain Hammond added. "Some species are thrilled about this. Others are less happy. We have received complaints from several groups claiming we are undermining their traditional child-rearing practices." "I am not undermining anything," Jake said. "I only help families who want help." "We know that," Captain Hammond said, "but perception matters. The Council has formally requested that we stop promoting human methods on the station." "What?" Jake sat forward in his chair. "They want me to stop helping bobbies." "They want us to stop what they see as cultural interference," Administrator explained. "They have very strong traditions about family and child rearing. They see your methods as a rejection of their ways." "That is ridiculous," Doctor said flatly. "Jake's methods do not reject anyone's culture. They simply offer additional tools that parents can choose to use or not use." "I agree," Captain Hammond said, "but we have to handle this carefully. They are a large and influential group. If they push hard enough, they could cause real problems." "So what do we do?" Jake asked. "We continue what we are doing, but we are more careful about it," Captain Hammond said. "We frame this as medical support rather than cultural change. We document everything. And we make it very clear that these techniques are optional and respectful of all cultural traditions. In other words, administrator said, we do not stop, but we watch our backs. The meeting left Jake feeling uneasy. He had just wanted to help crying Bobbies. He had not meant to start a political conflict, but apparently that was exactly what had happened. That afternoon, Jake was teaching a group of parents in Dormitory B when appeared again. The leader had several others with him, and they stood at the edge of the group, watching with hostile expressions. Jake finished explaining about white noise and how it could help Bobby sleep. The parents thanked him and dispersed, only then did approach. Still interfering, I see, said. Still helping families who ask for help, Jake replied calmly. You think you are so clever, human, but we know what you are doing. You are making parents dependent on you, making them think they cannot raise their own children without human help. That's not true. I teach them how to do it themselves. Most of these parents never ask for my help again after the first time because they don't need me anymore. You teach them to abandon their own ways, said, to reject the methods their ancestors used for generations. I teach them options, Jake said. Nobody is forced to use these techniques. Every parent decides for themselves what is best for their family. And if their choice conflicts with their culture, challenged. If a parent uses your methods instead of traditional ways, then that is their choice to make, Jake said firmly. Parents should be able to choose what works for their children. Spoken like a human, said with disgust. Your species has no respect for tradition or culture. You think everything should change to suit your way of thinking. That's not fair, a voice said. Jake turned to see a female standing nearby. She was holding a small baby, maybe 3 months old. I am, and I use the humans' methods. They help my daughter sleep. That does not make me any less. Stared at the female. You betray our ways. I care for my daughter, said. The traditional methods were not working. She cried constantly. I was exhausted. The human showed me something different and it helped. That is not betrayal. That is being a good mother. Your grandmother would be ashamed, said coldly. My grandmother would want her great-granddaughter to be happy and healthy, replied, just as I do. Other had gathered now, listening to the exchange. Jake could see the group was divided. Some nodded in agreement with, others looked at with sympathy and understanding. This is what happens when humans interfere, said, addressing the crowd now. They divide us. They make us question our own ways. They make us weak. No, another voice said. A male stepped forward. What makes us weak is refusing to learn, refusing to adapt. The galaxy is changing. The war has changed everything. If human methods can help our children, why should we refuse them out of pride? Because we are, said. We have survived for thousands of years without help from primitive humans. Humans are not primitive, said quietly. They are different, and sometimes different is exactly what we need. The argument continued, but Jake quietly slipped away. He had learned that his presence sometimes made things worse. Better to let the work this out among themselves. He found waiting for him near his patrol station. She looked worried. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, Jake said. Just tired of being the center of controversy. I only wanted to help Bobbies. I know, said, but you did help, is proof of that. All the Bobbies on this station are proof. Do not let in his group make you doubt that. That evening, Jake got a message from his family back on Earth. His younger sister Karen had seen a news report about the refugee station and the human soldier teaching alien parents how to care for their Bobbies. I saw you on the Galactic news feeds, her message said. Jake, I am so proud of you. Remember when I had my first baby and she cried for days? You stayed up with us, showed me all those techniques Mom taught you. Now you are helping alien families the same way. That is amazing. Mom would be so happy. Jake played the message 3 times. His mother had passed away 2 years ago, just before he joined the coalition forces. She had spent her life caring for children, first her own 7 kids, then as a teacher, then helping raise her. She would have loved knowing that the skills she taught Jake were now helping Bobbies from other worlds. Over the next few days, Jake noticed more changes on the station. Parents were teaching other parents. He would walk by a dormitory and see a mother showing a father the bouncing walk, a grandfather teaching a couple about white noise. The techniques were spreading organically now, passed from family to family. But the tension was growing too. His group was getting larger and more vocal. They started spreading rumors that humans were trying to control alien children, that the techniques were actually a form of brainwashing. Most people dismissed these claims as ridiculous, but some listened. Doctor warned Jake that the situation was becoming delicate. "The Coalition Medical Board is coming in 3 days," she said. "They will observe your work and interview families. If their report is positive, this could become an official program used throughout Coalition space. But if something goes wrong before they arrive, if there is a major incident, everything falls apart." "What kind of incident?" Jake asked. "Any kind," Doctor said. "A fight, an accusation, anything that makes this look dangerous or controversial. And his group are looking for an excuse to shut this down. We need to be careful." Jake tried to be careful. He kept his head down, helped families who asked for help, and avoided confrontations. But careful was not always enough. It happened 3 days before the medical board was scheduled to arrive. Jake was teaching a small group of parents in Dormitory C when alarms started blaring. Emergency lights flashed red. His communicator crackled to life. "All security personnel to Dormitory A immediately. Medical emergency. Infant in distress." Jake ran. His training kicked in, and he moved faster than he had moved in months. Other security guards were running too. They converged on Dormitory A from different directions. The scene was chaos. A crowd had gathered around a couple. The mother was holding a baby who was not moving. The father was screaming for help. Medical staff were pushing through the crowd. Jake forced his way to the front. The mother looked at him with desperate eyes. "My baby," she cried. "I tried what you showed me. I tried the walking and the bouncing, but he stopped breathing. He just stopped." Doctor arrived and immediately took the baby. She started working, checking vitals, beginning resuscitation procedures. Other medical staff helped. Jake stood back, feeling numb and helpless. The crowd was muttering. Jake Hurt's voice rising above the others. "This is what happens when you trust humans. The baby is dying because the mother used human methods instead of proper medical care." "That's not true," someone else said, but the seed of doubt was planted. Doctor worked for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, the baby made a sound, a cough, then a cry, the most beautiful sound Jake had ever heard. "He is breathing," Doctor announced. "He is going to be okay." The mother collapsed in relief. The father was crying. Jake felt his own eyes burning with tears he refused to let fall. Doctor scanned the baby with her medical equipment. "This was not caused by any human technique," she said loudly, addressing the crowd. "The infant has a congenital heart condition that we did not know about. It could have happened at any time, regardless of how the parents were caring for him. The human methods had nothing to do with this." But Jake could see the damage was already done. People were looking at him differently now, with suspicion, with doubt. Even some of the families he had helped looked uncertain. Pushed forward. "The doctor says it was not the human's fault, but can we be sure? Can we risk our children on techniques from a species we barely know?" "The techniques are sound," Doctor said firmly. "I have documented their effectiveness. This incident is completely unrelated." "Perhaps," said, "but perhaps not. Perhaps we should stop this experiment before more Bobbies are put at risk." The crowd was murmuring now, voices rising. Jake could feel everything he had worked for slipping away, all because of bad timing and one scared parent's words. Captain Hammond appeared, her voice cutting through the noise. "Everyone back to your quarters. Now, the medical emergency is over. There is nothing more to see here." The crowd slowly dispersed. Jake stood there, watching parents he had helped avoid looking at him, watching others whisper and point. Everything had changed in just a few minutes. Later in Captain Hammond's office, the situation became clear. "The medical board has postponed their visit," the captain said. "Indefinitely. They want to wait until things settle down." But doctor said the baby's condition was not related to Jake's methods. Administrator protested. "It does not matter what the truth is," Captain Hammond said tiredly. "It matters what people believe. Right now, people are scared. They are questioning whether the human techniques are safe. Until that changes, we cannot move forward with formalizing the program." "So what do we do?" Jake asked. Captain Hammond looked at him with something like sympathy. "For now, you go back to regular security duties. No more baby rounds. No more teaching sessions. We let things cool down." "But the families who need help," Jake said. "We'll have to rely on the medical staff and on what they have already learned from you," Captain Hammond said. "I am sorry, Martinez, but this is how it has to be right now." Jake left the office feeling like he had failed. He had tried to help, and somehow it had all gone wrong. He walked through the station corridors, ignoring the looks and whispers from refugees who saw him pass. He found waiting for him near his quarters. She had with her, and the baby reached out toward Jake with tiny hands when she saw him. "I heard what happened," said. "Yeah," Jake said. He gently took his hand and the baby grabbed his finger and held on tight. "It is not fair," said. "You did nothing wrong." "Doesn't matter," Jake said. "Fair or not, this is done. No more teaching, no more helping." "People will still need you," said. "Then they'll have to figure it out on their own," Jake said. He pulled his finger gently from his grip and walked away, leaving standing in the corridor watching him go. That night, as he lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, Jake wondered if it had all been a mistake. Maybe he was right. Maybe humans should not have been interfering. Maybe trying to help had only made things worse. But then he thought about baby's first peaceful night of sleep, about all the families who were less exhausted and stressed, about parents from different species learning from each other and helping each other. It had mattered. No matter what happened next, it had mattered. But what came next, Jake had no idea. Jake spent the next 3 days doing exactly what Captain Hammond ordered. He patrolled the corridors. He checked security systems. He filed reports. He did his job and nothing more. He did not make baby rounds. He did not offer help to struggling parents. He kept his head down and his mouth shut. It was the hardest 3 days of his deployment. He could see the changes immediately. In Dormitory C, an infant was crying again, that same desperate sound that meant overstimulation and fear. The parents tried the techniques Jake had taught them, but they could not quite get the rhythm right. They needed someone to show them again, to help them remember. But Jake walked past without stopping. In Dormitory B, a mother looked at him with pleading eyes as her baby fussed and squirmed. Jake wanted to help. His hands actually twitched with the need to take the infant and do the bouncing walk that would calm the baby down. But he kept walking. Tried to help where she could. She had learned well and others listened to her. But there were so many species on the station, and each had slightly different needs. Without Jake to coordinate and teach, the informal support system they had built was falling apart. The tensions in the dormitories increased again. Exhausted parents snapped at each other. Sleep-deprived refugees got into arguments over small things. The peaceful atmosphere that had developed over the past weeks evaporated like it had never existed. Doctor found Jake on his patrol one morning. The doctor looked frustrated. "This is foolish," she said without preamble. "Infant distress levels are rising again. Parent stress is increasing. We are undoing all the progress we made." "I have my orders," Jake said flatly. "Orders that do not make sense," doctor said. The medical board postponed because of fear, not facts. My data clearly shows the baby's heart condition was completely unrelated to your methods, but fear spreads faster than facts. What do you want me to do? Jake asked. Disobey direct orders. I want you to help, doctor said, but I understand you cannot. Not officially. So I am telling you this as information, not as a request. 4 more infants have been admitted to medical with severe distress symptoms in the past 2 days. None were in crisis before you stopped helping their families. Jake felt the words like a punch to the gut. Are they okay? For now, doctor said, but I worry. Bobbies under constant stress develop health problems, weakened immune systems, failure to thrive. The longer this continues, the more likely we are to have serious medical emergencies. Doctor walked away, leaving Jake alone with that information. He tried to keep doing his job, tried to ignore the sounds of crying bobbies and the sight of desperate parents, but it was like trying to ignore an alarm that would not stop ringing. On the 4th day, everything changed. Jake was doing an evening patrol through Dormitory C when he heard the commotion. Not the usual sounds of a crowded refugee quarters, but something urgent and frightening. People were shouting. Someone was crying. He ran toward the noise and found a crowd gathered around a familiar corner. Was there, and she was screaming. Please, someone help, my baby is sick, is so sick. Jake pushed through the crowd, was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth within her arms. Even from a distance, Jake could see something was very wrong. The baby's skin, normally a healthy pale blue, was dark and blotchy, was not crying. She was barely moving. What happened? Jake asked, dropping to his knees beside them. She started getting fussy yesterday, said through her tears. Just a little fussy. I thought maybe she was getting sick, but the medical staff said she was fine. But today she got worse. She has a fever. She will not eat. She just lies there. Jake gently touched the baby's forehead. Hot, too hot. Breathing was rapid and shallow. The baby's eyes opened briefly, looked at Jake, then closed again. Did you take her to medical? Jake asked. Yes, this morning. They gave her medicine and sent us back here. They said to come back if she got worse. But she is worse, Jake. She is so much worse. Jake looked around. The crowd was watching, and he could see among them. The leader's face was hard to read, but Jake thought he saw something like satisfaction there, as if getting sick proved his point somehow. We need to get her to medical now, Jake said. I cannot carry her, said. I am too scared. What if I drop her? What if I make her worse? I will carry her, Jake said. He carefully took the baby from his arms. Was so light and so hot with fever. Her little body was limp and unresponsive. Jake stood up with the baby and helped to her feet. They started toward medical, but the crowd did not part. People stood there watching. Let us through, Jake said firmly. Why should we trust you with that baby? A voice called out. Jake could not see who said it. Last time you tried to help, a baby almost died. That baby had a heart condition, Jake said. This baby has a fever and needs medical care. Now move. Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd parted. Jake walked quickly, not quite running but close to it, followed, stumbling and crying. The medical bay was busy as always, but doctor saw them immediately and rushed over. She took one look at, and her professional calm cracked just a little. How long has she been like this? Doctor asked, taking the baby and moving to an examination table. She was fussy yesterday, said, but she got much worse today. Doctor was scanning with her equipment. Other medical staff gathered around. Jake could see the numbers on the displays, and even though he did not fully understand biology, he knew those numbers were bad. Severe infection, doctor said. Blood toxicity. The baby's immune system is overwhelmed. Can you help her? Asked desperately. We will try, doctor said, but she is very sick. They worked on for what felt like hours. Jake and were pushed to the side as medical staff rushed around with equipment and medicine. Jake could hear the baby making weak sounds, barely loud enough to hear. It was worse than the crying had been weeks ago. At least crying meant the baby had strength. This meant was too weak to cry. Finally, doctor came over to them. She looked exhausted. We have stabilized her for now, but she is not out of danger. The infection is fighting the medicine. Her stress levels are extremely high, which is making it harder for her body to heal. Stress hormones are interfering with her immune response. What does that mean? Asked. It means she needs to feel calm and safe so her body can focus on getting better, doctor said. She looked at Jake when she said it. But there is only so much we can do with medicine. Jake understood what she was saying. What she was asking without asking needed more than medicine. The baby needed to feel safe and loved and calm. The baby needed what Jake had provided weeks ago when nothing else worked. But he had orders. Direct orders not to interfere with refugee families. Orders from Captain Hammond herself. "Can I see her?" Jake asked. Doctor nodded and led him to the small bed where lay. The baby was hooked up to multiple machines. Her tiny chest rose and fell too fast, her breathing quick and desperate. Even unconscious, Jake could see the tension in his little body. He looked at. She was staring at her baby with an expression that broke Jake's heart. She had already lost her husband to the war. Now she might lose her daughter to an infection that her own body could not fight because she was too stressed to heal properly. Jake thought about the orders, thought about his career and what might happen if he disobeyed, thought about the politics and the controversy and all the reasons Captain Hammond said he should stay away. Then he thought about his mother, about the way she used to tell him that some rules matter more than others, that kindness is not negotiable, that when someone needs help, you help them, period. "Can I hold her?" Jake asked doctor. The doctor looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at, then back at Jake. "I will have to note in the medical record that the patient's mother requested you specifically as a comfort aid," doctor said carefully. "I will have to say that the patient's stress levels were dangerously high, and all medical interventions were failing to reduce them. I will have to say that I authorized unconventional comfort methods because the patient's life was at risk." "Will that protect you?" Jake asked. "Probably not," doctor said, "but I will do it anyway because it is the right thing to do." Doctor carefully disconnected some of the monitors and adjusted others so they were portable. Then she lifted and placed the baby in Jake's arms. The baby felt so small and fragile. Jake could feel the fever burning through the thin medical blanket. He started to move using the gentle bounce walk that had worked before. Rock, step, bounce. Rock, step, bounce. At first, nothing changed. Was too sick, too far gone to respond. But Jake kept going. He started to hum his mother's lullaby, the one he had hummed to all his younger siblings, the one he had hummed to that first night weeks ago. Doctor was watching her monitors. Heart rate is starting to decrease. Not much, but it is something. Jake kept walking, kept humming. His arms started to ache, but he did not care. Around him, the medical bay continued its normal chaos. Other patients needed care. Medical staff rushed around. But Jake focused only on the baby in his arms and the rhythm of his steps. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. "Stress hormone levels are dropping," doctor reported. "Respiration is slowing to more normal levels." Jake felt shift slightly in his arms. Not much, just a small movement. But it was more than she had done in hours. He kept walking, kept humming. At 45 minutes, the baby's eyes opened. Just for a moment, just a brief flutter, but looked up at Jake, and he could have sworn the baby recognized him. "She is responding better to the medicine now," doctor said. There was relief in her voice. "Her body is fighting the infection more effectively." Was crying again, but these were different tears. Hope instead of despair. Jake walked for another hour. His legs were shaking with exhaustion, and his back was screaming at him. But he did not stop. He walked and bounced and hummed until doctor checked her monitors and nodded. "Her vitals are stabilizing. The fever is starting to break. I think she is going to be okay." Jake carefully sat down in a chair, still holding. The baby was asleep now, a real sleep instead of the unconscious fever state from before. Her breathing was slower and deeper. Her skin was still hot but not burning like before. Sat next to him, touching her daughter's hand gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Jake was too tired to respond. He just sat there, holding the sleeping baby, feeling her breathe against his chest. That was how Captain Hammond found them an hour later. The captain stood in the doorway of the medical bay, looking at Jake. Her expression was unreadable. Jake waited for the anger, for the order to put the baby down and report for discipline. Instead, Captain Hammond walked over to Doctor. "Report." Doctor provided a detailed medical explanation. The infection, the stress levels, the failure of standard treatments, the decision to try alternative comfort methods. She was professional and thorough, taking full responsibility for authorizing Jake to help. Captain Hammond listened to it all without interrupting. Then she looked at the monitors showing vital signs. "Those numbers are better than they were an hour ago," the captain asked. "Significantly better," Doctor confirmed. "And you believe the human comfort techniques contributed to the improvement?" "I believe they were essential to the improvement," Doctor said. "The baby's body could not fight the infection while under severe stress. Reducing that stress allowed the medicine to work effectively." Captain Hammond was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Jake. "Martinez, you disobeyed a direct order." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said quietly. "I did." "You put yourself at risk of disciplinary action, possibly even discharge." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Jake looked down at the sleeping baby in his arms. "Because she needed help. Because I could help. Because that is more important than following orders that do not make sense." He expected the captain to be angry, expected punishment, but instead she sighed and pulled up a chair. "When I gave you those orders, I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting you, protecting the program, avoiding controversy," Captain Hammond said. "But I was wrong. I let fear and politics make decisions that should have been made based on what was right." She stood up and addressed Doctor. "Doctor, I want a full report on this incident. Include all medical data. Include your professional opinion on the effectiveness of human comfort techniques for stressed infants. I am going to send it to the medical board myself, with a recommendation that they move forward immediately with formalizing these methods." "Captain," Doctor said, surprised. "The board postponed because of fear and speculation. Now we have concrete evidence and a life saved. If they still refuse to act, then they are making the wrong decision, and I will say so publicly," Captain Hammond said. She looked at Jake. "And Martinez, your orders are officially changed. You are to resume helping families with infant care. That is now a formal part of your duties, not something you do on your own time." "What about in the complaints?" Jake asked. "Let them complain," Captain Hammond said. "We have data now. We have evidence. We have a baby who would have died without your help. Facts matter more than fear." She left the medical bay, leaving Jake sitting there in shock. Doctor was smiling. Her reptilian features arranged in what Jake had learned was her expression of satisfaction. "You did well," Doctor told him, "both in saving the baby and in making the right choice." Jake looked at, now sleeping peacefully in his arms, at who was holding her daughter's hand and crying quiet tears of relief, at the monitors showing stable, healthy vital signs. He had broken the rules, he had risked his career, but he had saved a life. Sometimes, he thought, that was all that mattered. Later that night, after had been moved to a recovery room and was finally sleeping in a chair beside her daughter's bed, Jake stood outside the medical bay and looked out at the station through a viewport. The stars looked the same as they always did, but something had changed. He had changed. He had learned that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules, that sometimes compassion was more important than protocol, that sometimes one person's choice could change everything. He thought about what Doctor had said, about human emotional intelligence being valuable, about the techniques humanity had developed over thousands of years mattering to species across the galaxy. Maybe that was humanity's real strength, not technology or weapons or physical power, but the ability to care, to understand what others needed even when they could not say it themselves, to help even when it was hard or dangerous or unpopular. Jake smiled. His mother would have been proud, he was pretty sure about that. Tomorrow, Captain Hammond's report would go to the medical board. Tomorrow, the real work would begin to formalize these techniques and spread them across coalition space. Tomorrow, everything might change. But tonight, a baby slept peacefully, recovering from an illness that had almost killed her. A mother could rest knowing her daughter would be okay. And a human soldier had proven that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could save lives. That was enough for now. 3 weeks after Baby recovered from her infection, Jake stood in front of a room full of people and felt more nervous than he had ever felt in combat. The room was packed with representatives from a dozen different species, medical professionals from across coalition space, station administrators, even a few political representatives who wanted to see what all the attention was about. They had come to Refugee Station Theta 7 to observe what everyone was calling the Human Infant Care Initiative. Captain Hammond stood next to Jake at the front of the room. Doctor was on his other side with her data pad full of research and statistics, but Jake was the one who had to talk, had to explain, had to demonstrate. Just be yourself, Captain Hammond had told him that morning. Tell them what you know, show them what you do. That is all they need to see. Easy for her to say. She was not standing in front of half a dozen species who had been skeptical about humans since first contact, who still saw humanity as young and inexperienced and possibly dangerous. Jake took a breath and started talking. My name is Corporal Jake Martinez. I am a human from Earth. About 6 weeks ago, I helped a mother with a crying baby. I used techniques my own mother taught me, techniques humans have developed over thousands of years of caring for helpless infants. I did not think it was anything special, but it turned out those techniques work across species. He nodded to, who was sitting in the front row with on her lap. The baby was healthy now, happy and alert and curious about all the strangers in the room. This is, and her daughter, is the first baby I helped. She had been crying for 3 days straight. Nothing helped until I used human calming methods, gentle bouncing walks, steady rhythms, soft sounds, creating a calm, safe presence for the baby to rely on. Jake demonstrated the bounce walk, using a practice doll that Doctor had provided. He showed the rhythm, explained the reasoning behind it. Around the room, representatives watched with intense focus. But it is not just about the specific movements, Jake continued. It is about understanding what babies need. They need to feel safe. They need calm, patient caregivers. They need someone who stays centered even when the baby is upset. He spent the next hour teaching, showing different techniques for different situations, explaining how stress affects infant health, demonstrating how parents could learn these methods themselves and not need ongoing help. Doctor presented her data, charts showing decreased infant distress across the station, graphs demonstrating reduced parent stress levels, statistics proving that conflicts in dormitories had dropped by over 60% since the program started, medical evidence that babies who received this kind of care had stronger immune systems and better overall health. The science is clear, Doctor said. These techniques work. They are safe, effective, and can be taught to caregivers of any species. The question is not whether we should implement this program. The question is how quickly we can get it to other facilities where families need help. After the presentation, Jake answered questions. Some were about specific techniques. Others were about training requirements or cultural considerations. A few were skeptical, asking if this was really better than established medical approaches. "It is not better or worse," Jake said patiently. "It is different. It works alongside medical care, not instead of it. When got sick, she needed medicine to fight the infection. But she also needed comfort to reduce her stress so the medicine could work. Both were necessary." A representative stood up. For a moment, Jake worried it was or one of his group. But this was an older female with official government markings on her uniform. "I am representative," she said. Jake recognized the name, the same who had defended using his methods weeks ago. "I have a question for the human." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. "You said these techniques come from Earth, from human culture, but you teach them freely to other species. You do not charge, you do not demand recognition. Why? What does humanity gain from this?" Jake thought about how to answer, about politics and perceptions and saying the right thing. Then he decided to just tell the truth. "We gain the same thing any person gains from helping others. We get to know we made a difference. We get to see Bobbies who are happy instead of distressed, parents who are rested instead of exhausted, families who are thriving instead of barely surviving." He paused. "That is what humans care about, not recognition or profit, just helping." Nodded slowly. "That is what I thought. That is what I told my people when they questioned this program. That humans help because it is right, not because they want something in return." She sat down and the room was quiet for a moment. Then another representative stood up. Then another. One by one, representatives from different species voiced their support for implementing the program on their own facilities. The coalition medical board officials conferred quietly in a corner. Finally, the senior board member, a dignified named administrator, stood to speak. "The medical board has reviewed all evidence. We have observed the techniques in practice. We have examined the data. Our conclusion is clear. The Human Infant Care Initiative should be implemented across coalition space immediately. We will develop formal training programs and distribute materials to all refugee facilities within the month." The room erupted in discussion. Captain Hammond smiled, Doctor looked satisfied, and Jake just felt relieved that it was over. After the meeting, Jake was surrounded by people wanting to talk to him. Medical professionals asking detailed questions. Parents sharing their own experiences with the techniques. Even a few reporters from Galactic news services who wanted to do stories about the human soldier who taught aliens how to comfort Bobbies. It was overwhelming. Jake had never wanted attention. He had just wanted to help. But he answered questions and accepted thanks and tried to be gracious about the whole thing. Later, he found waiting for him outside the conference room. Reached for Jake when she saw him, and he took the baby with the ease of long practice. "You did well in there," said. "I just told the truth," Jake said. Grabbed his finger and held on tight the way she always did. "The truth is powerful," said. "It changes minds and hearts. Your truth about helping because it is right, that truth is changing how the galaxy sees humans." "I just helped some Bobbies," Jake protested. "No," said firmly. "You did more than that. You showed that humans have something valuable to offer that is not weapons or technology. You showed that emotional intelligence and compassion are strengths, not weaknesses. You showed that being new to the galaxy does not mean humanity has nothing to teach." Jake looked down at who was making happy sounds and waving her free hand around. "She's gotten so big," he said, changing the subject because words made him uncomfortable. "She has," agreed, letting him change the subject. "And healthy. The doctors say she is developing perfectly. No lasting effects from the infection." "Good," Jake said. "That's really good." "I am leaving next week," said quietly. "Taking to the colony where my sister lives. It is time." Jake had known this was coming. Had always planned to move on once was healthy enough to travel, but it still felt sudden. "You will be missed," Jake said. "I will miss you too," said. "You saved my daughter's life twice. I can never repay that." You don't need to repay anything, Jake said. I'm just glad she's okay. But I want to do something, said. So I spoke with the medical board. I am going to help train other caregivers, teach them these techniques from a parent's perspective, travel to different facilities and share what I learned. That's perfect, Jake said, genuinely pleased. You'll be great at that. I learned from the best, said with a smile. They talked for a while longer, making plans to stay in touch. Jake promised to message when he was reassigned to a new station, promised to send updates about its growth. It was the kind of goodbye that was sad but also full of hope for the future. That evening, Jake got a call from Earth. His sister Karen appeared on the screen, grinning. Jake, you're famous. Everyone here is talking about how my big brother is teaching the whole galaxy about taking care of bobbies. I'm not teaching the whole galaxy, Jake protested. Close enough, Karen said. Mom would have loved this so much. Remember how she always said the best thing we could do was help others. That kindness mattered more than anything else. Yeah, Jake said softly, I remember. Well, you're living that. You're taking what she taught us and sharing it with species we didn't even know existed when she was alive. That's amazing, Jake. You should be proud. I'm just doing my job, Jake said. No, Karen said firmly. You're doing more than your job. You're showing everyone what humans can be, what we should be. After the call ended, Jake sat alone in his quarters and thought about his mother, about the lessons she taught through example rather than words, about how she always made time for children, whether they were her own or neighbors or complete strangers, about how she believed every child deserved to feel safe and loved. She had never traveled to the stars, had never met an alien or seen another world, but her wisdom was now spreading across the galaxy, helping families from dozens of different species. It was a strange kind of legacy, but a good one. The next few weeks were busy. Jake trained teams of caregivers who would spread out to other stations. He worked with Doctor to create training materials that could be used by any species. He answered hundreds of questions and demonstrated techniques until he could do them in his sleep. Reports started coming in from other facilities. A refugee camp on a remote moon where infant distress levels dropped significantly after implementing the program. A hospital station where premature bobbies responded well to the gentle bouncing techniques. A colony where mixed-species families learned to care for children from different backgrounds using human methods as a common language. The program was spreading faster than anyone expected. Within a month, over 50 coalition facilities had adopted the Human Infant Care Initiative. Within 2 months, it was over 100. Jake received messages from grateful parents across coalition space. A father whose twins finally slept through the night. A mother whose baby stopped having panic attacks. A mixed couple who used the techniques to help their hybrid infant adjust to the world. Each message reminded Jake why he had started this. Not for recognition or fame, but because bobbies needed help and he knew how to provide it. And his group never apologized. But they did stop spreading rumors and causing problems, had apparently spoken to the leadership, and they had decided not to oppose the program officially. Some individuals still refused to use human methods, and that was their choice. But most were willing to try, especially after seeing the results. Doctor published her research in the Journal of Medicine. The paper was titled Cross-Species Application of Human Infant Comfort Techniques, a study in universal caregiving practices. Jake was listed as a co-author, which felt strange but also right. The paper concluded that while different species had different biological needs, the emotional requirements of infants were surprisingly universal. The need for safety, calm, and attentive care crossed species boundaries. And humans, who had spent caring for extraordinarily helpless infants, had developed sophisticated techniques that worked across those boundaries. Your species evolved with the most dependent bobbies in known space, Doctor told Jake. Human infants cannot even hold their heads up for months. They require constant care and attention, so humans had to get very good at providing that care. Other species with more self-sufficient young never needed to develop such sophisticated techniques. So our weakness became a strength, Jake said. Exactly, Doctor said. A perfect example of how diversity benefits everyone. Each species brings something unique to the galactic community. Humans bring emotional intelligence and caregiving expertise that others lack. 6 weeks after the conference, Captain Hammond called Jake to her office. He went wondering what new challenge was waiting. Martinez, the captain said, I have news. Coalition Command has created a new position, Cross-Species Family Support Specialist. They want someone to oversee the expansion of the infant care program across all Coalition facilities and eventually into civilian populations. That sounds like a big job, Jake said. It is. They want you to take it. Jake stared at her. Me? But I'm just a corporal. I'm not qualified to run a galaxy-wide program. You created a galaxy-wide program, Captain Hammond pointed out. Who better to run it? You would be promoted to lieutenant, based here on Theta 7 but traveling to other facilities to train and advise. You would work with medical professionals, administrators, and family advocates across Coalition space. What about security? Jake asked. We will miss you on the security team, Captain Hammond said. But this is where you are needed most. This is where you can make the biggest difference. Jake thought about it. About leaving behind the simple routine of security patrols, about taking on responsibility for a program that was already helping thousands of families and would help millions more, about traveling across Coalition space, meeting new species, teaching and learning. It was terrifying. It was also exactly what he wanted to do. I accept, Jake said. Good, Captain Hammond said. You start next month. That gives you time to finish your current assignments and prepare for the new role. Jake left the office feeling like his life had just changed completely. He had come to this station 6 months ago as a simple security guard. Now, he was going to be responsible for family support programs across the galaxy. He found himself walking to Dormitory C out of habit, the place where this had all started, where a desperate mother and a crying baby had changed everything. The dormitory was peaceful now. Parents were playing with their children. Bobbies were making happy sounds. A father was showing a mother the bouncing walk while their bobbies watched. People from different worlds, different cultures, different species, all learning from each other. Jake watched for a while, unnoticed in the doorway. This was what he had wanted. Not fame or recognition, but this. Families helping families. Knowledge being shared freely. Bobbies being cared for with patience and love. A young couple approached him. Are you Jake Martinez? The female asked. Yes, Jake said. We wanted to thank you, she said. Our baby was crying all the time. We were so tired and frustrated, but we learned your techniques and everything got better. You saved our family. I'm glad I could help, Jake said. You did more than help, the male said. You taught us that it is okay to ask for help, that accepting knowledge from others does not make us weak, that different species can learn from each other and everyone benefits. They thanked him again and walked away, leaving Jake standing there thinking about what they said. That night, Jake sent a message to his family on Earth. He told them about the promotion and the new position, about how something that started with helping one baby had become something that might change how the entire galaxy thought about and cross-species cooperation. His sister Corinne responded immediately. Mom always said you had a gift for taking care of others. Guess the whole galaxy figured that out too. Proud of you, big brother. Jake smiled and looked out his viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, families were using techniques his mother had taught him. Bobbies were sleeping peacefully because of wisdom passed down through human generations, and people from dozens of worlds were learning that humanity had something valuable to offer. It was not what he had expected when he volunteered for refugee duty 6 months ago. He had just wanted to help people instead of fighting. He had wanted to make a difference in small, quiet ways. Instead, he had started a movement, changed policies, altered how the galaxy saw humanity, all because he knew how to calm a crying baby. The next morning, Jake made his last patrol through the dormitories as a security guard. He stopped by all the families he had helped, saying goodbye and wishing them well. Most would be moving on soon, heading to new colonies or reuniting with distant family. Some would stay on the station. All of them would remember him. His last stop was at the medical bay. Doctor was there, reviewing patient charts. "Come to say goodbye?" she asked. "Something like that," Jake said. "Thank you for believing in this, for backing me up when it got difficult, for doing the research that proved it worked." "I should thank you," Doctor said. "You taught me that medical care is not just about treating illness. It is about treating the whole person, the whole family. You taught me that sometimes the best medicine is patience and kindness." "My mother would have liked you," Jake said. "I would have liked to meet her," Doctor said. "Any person who raised a son like you must have been remarkable." They talked for a while about the future, about the program's expansion, about the research opportunities, about how this was just the beginning of understanding how different species could learn from each other. Finally, Jake left the medical bay and headed to the central hub. There was a viewing deck there with a clear view of space. He stood at the railing and looked out at the stars. 6 months ago, he had arrived at this station feeling lost, feeling like he was running away from combat instead of toward anything meaningful. He had wanted to help but did not know how. Now he knew. Now he had found his purpose. Humans brought something unique to the galaxy. Not just technology or military strength, but something softer and more powerful. The ability to care, to understand, to help others feel safe and loved, even across the vast differences of species and culture. It was a strange superpower, but in its own way, it was as important as any weapon or any scientific discovery. Jake thought about Baby, now healthy and happy on a colony world with her mother and aunt, about all the other Bobbies who had cried and been comforted, about parents who had been at the end of their rope and found hope, about families from a dozen worlds learning to help each other. One small act of kindness, one crying baby, one human soldier who knew what to do. That was how change started, not with grand gestures or political movements, but with one person helping another person who needed it, with compassion offered freely, with knowledge shared without expectation of return. And now that change was spreading across the galaxy, one family at a time. Jake smiled at the stars and felt his mother's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. She would have been so proud, not because he was famous or getting promoted, but because he had helped, because he had taken what she taught him and used it to make the galaxy a little bit better, a little bit kinder. That was all that really mattered in the end. Not recognition or glory, but the knowledge that you made a difference, that you helped someone who needed help, that you left the world better than you found it. Jake Martinez, human soldier, had done that, and he was just getting started. The galaxy was vast and full of families who needed support, full of Bobbies who needed comfort, full of opportunities to help and to learn and to build bridges between different worlds. He was ready for all of it, ready to show the galaxy what humans could do when they put compassion first, ready to prove that sometimes the greatest strength was not power or knowledge, but simple kindness offered freely, ready to change the galaxy one crying baby at a time. The stars shone bright in the darkness, and Jake stood beneath them, thinking about the future, about all the families he would help, about all the techniques he would teach, about all the Bobbies who would sleep peacefully because someone cared enough to learn how to comfort them. It was going to be amazing. And it all started with one simple truth that his mother had taught him long ago, and that the galaxy was only now beginning to understand. Every baby, no matter what species, deserves to feel safe and loved. Every parent, no matter what world they come from, deserves support and understanding. And every person, human or alien, has the capacity to care for others if they just take the time to learn how. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology, but compassion, understanding, the willingness to help even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Jake looked one last time at the stars, then turned and headed back into the station. He had work to do, families to help, a galaxy to change. One baby at a time.